Well, it's Tuesday night, 7 o'clock, and we have another interesting guest for you. We did work for a while on a different channel where Dennis was a regular on that channel, while Lala was a regular on that channel. And he was awesome. He can really lay it down, especially when he gets going talking about demons and others. So we'll engage him in all sorts of interesting things tonight. Dr. Dennis Carroll has a doctorate in divinity, metaphysics, and philosophy. So he's going to here to educate us deeply. And I like it because he and I have a similar accent. So it ought to be good. Dennis, welcome.
There you go. We have to stick together for that kind of stuff, definitely. Uh, yeah, it is a fascinating subject what we're going to talk about tonight, and the most interesting thing about all of this, and I try to stress this point with people, is that this is connected and goes into so many different aspects of our existence. It is that's what makes it so very fascinating. But when I got into demonology many years ago, I also had to go through the occult. I had to study a lot about the occult because they're really connected and tied to each other very closely.
Yeah, I agree.
That's good. You got your first question?
Well, first I'd like to know how you're a retired police officer. Yes, is that correct? Or law enforcement?
Yeah, I was in law enforcement for quite a while. Retired out of that. Before that, I was also employed at a nearby hospital for about 30 some odd years. And so used to help out in the morgue and some places like that in there as well. Uh, I've seen a lot of the different aspects of careers, several different types of careers
Well,
in my
that you've
time.
seen
So I
the
kind of got
several
different
different
perspectives on things.
you've
Right.
seen several different aspects of spirituality in people's lives too, with all that.
Oh, absolutely. Especially as a police officer, you see a lot of I call it the dark underbelly of life that, people don't a lot of times think about. I have seen and met serial killers. I've been in a lot. I've been shot at, and so the list goes on and on. As a law enforcement officer, you get to experience a very wide range of things. Definitely.
I've always wondered, do you think that a lot of serial killers have evil attachments to them and it kind of helps them along and doing bad stuff?
Oh, absolutely. I've often said that I have looked into the eyes of some serial killers, and looking back was something that was definitely not human there to it.
Right.
In that aspect, they've lost. I think the big thing about serial killers, and I think there is an outside evil. As a demonologist, I believe without a doubt, there's an outside evil influence on a lot of stuff. Not everything. You can't paint it all with the
Right.
same brush, but many instances that is there. And I have seen, looking back from those eyes, something that really wasn't human anymore. In other words, they had lost all emotion, feeling, or empathy for people. And here's the thing about it: there is a darkness inherent in all of us.
Mhm.
Okay, there's a dark side to us. We used to say in law enforcement, in everybody, there's a murderer waiting to come out. You never know. Under certain right circumstances, that will happen. But that darkness that is inherent in all of us can be hooked sometimes or drawn out further out of us by the darkness in this world, by the darkness that's inherent to certain forces that live in the darkness and shadows of our world and our society.
Right.
This darkness is looking to hook up with our inner darkness and pull us deeper into that darkness spiritually until we lose our humanity. When you lose your humanity, you lose your soul as well.
I definitely agree. I've always been into paranormal, but I never really believed in possession. I mean, I liked the movies, but I never believed in possessions and attachments until a few years ago. I had an experience after I lost my parents and boyfriend. And I guess because maybe grief can bring negative things to you, but ever since then, I've been interested in learning more about it. It is as terrible as it is. It's very interesting as well. Um, just so I like to ask everybody, what is the extreme or intense experience you've had as maybe a possession or just in your whole life? What was the most extreme you've experienced?
Well, but I'm not an exorcist myself, but I have attended several exorcisms that I've been, called in on some. I have seen some very extreme stuff, without a doubt, that you might think would be in a Hollywood movie kind of a setting. But we've got to remember something about Hollywood. Okay, so Hollywood is mainly entertainment,
Right.
and it will go way out of line to do that. Okay, in entertainment wise. But I used to say this. Matter of fact, I met William Buddy many years ago, and he was, of course, the one who wrote, The Exorcist. And
Mhm.
he told me something very interesting, and it's always stuck with me. He said that when I began to write The Exorcist, I was not a believer, and when I finished the book, I was.
Whoa,
Oh wow.
that's
And
interesting.
see, that's always stuck with me. That says a lot. That says volumes on that kind of experience, But you got to remember Hollywood, just like what you just said about possession and stuff. I think it's more rare than Hollywood would have us believe.
Right.
It's not that rare, but it's not as prevalent as Hollywood wants us to believe because they're trying to get us with a scare factor. But
Mhm.
that's the scary part about The Exorcist. Okay, what makes it to me the most frightening type of a horror movie is because it could be very and is many times real.
Right. Oh yeah. Um, can I ask?
Go for it. You're in charge.
I'm excited you're here because I have a bunch of stuff I want to know. So with my experience, whatever it was that came to me had pure white eyes. But then I've heard other people have seen pure black eyes, pure red eyes. Do the eye color, does it symbolize something in particular with that type of entity?
Well, usually when it's human and the eyes are very black, and we're talking about not just the iris, we're talking about the whole eye itself.
Right.
That's kind of rare. That does supposedly happen, especially with black-eyed children and
Mhm.
certain black-eyed adults. Um, the white that you talked about is usually the eyes rolling back in the head, kind of thing. Is kind of and it is usually an extreme thing of pain or trauma of some sort that causes that. I've seen that happen in a lot of accidents and stuff. Uh, road accidents and stuff like that. I've seen that happen as well. But then when you get into the red eye thing, usually the red eyes is a thing attached to certain cryptids or creatures that may be out there. If you run into a wolf with glowing red eyes, you may have a very distinct demonic problem on your hands.
Mhm.
Absolutely, I agree with that. But we get hung up on things like that. And I've had a lot of people. I wrote a book called Beyond the Shadows, and in the book, I put a list of certain things that happen if you are possessed. And for
Okay.
many years after that, I had people coming to me and say, oh, Dr. Carroll, I got this sign or I got that sign. Am I possessed or something like that? And I said, well, I had to kind of revise that and say, well, if you've got maybe 10 or more of these signs, you might have a problem. But that doesn't necessarily always come out that way. But let me say this, okay? Now listen very close. Anything in this world, any living thing that has a potential spirit to it, and that includes animals and people, has the ability to be possessed. Atoms like books or guns or whatever cannot be possessed, but they can be influenced. They can have an aura of evil and influence about them.
Right.
I've actually sat in electric chairs and I could feel, and I'm not talking about the electrical part of it, I could feel a very dark part to it. Just knowing what it was, I think, also influences us too. But when you encounter certain items, yes, they can definitely be cursed. You don't want to bring them into your life. You definitely don't want to bring them in your house. But there have been, like you were talking about earlier, there have been many instances in my career where I have met people who had attachments, you might call them that, attachments of a demonological nature with these spirits attached to them. So you have to be very careful who you let in your life sometimes, or who you even let in your house.
Right. Absolutely. Oh yeah. So I don't really understand. I want to learn more about the generational curses. Can you kind of explain that a little bit?
Well, generational curses are usually brought about by dark shadow contracts and agreements that people make with dark forces. And when they do that, they can promise not only themselves, but their family to so many different generations will be obedient to that agreement. Okay. And when these agreements are signed, it's sort of against it's sort of against what you may believe, but they believe had a different belief system in it. Okay. And that's what encourages this curse kind of thing. Now, let me say this. I saw a sign one time in a cemetery, and it said this, and it makes me think of generational curses. This is what the sign said: I was brought here without my consent. I will leave without being consulted. That's kind of the way curses go. You may not have a part in it, but you may get the output of it later on. And generational curses are definitely passed down through what we call bloodlines. And you will run into that sometimes as well, definitely. But it can be broken. The contract, no matter what that contract is or what agreements have been made, if you didn't make it, most of the time you can break it.
Okay.
Oh, that's encouraging. Or how does one go about breaking it?
Yeah, I was thinking.
Oh yeah, it can be done in a spiritual way. This is a spiritual agreement that's been made, and you have to break it spiritually. Okay, that's very much like what the Bible says. You might remember that very famous passage where Jesus told Nicodemus that God is a spirit, and you must worship Him in the spirit. Spiritual things can be taken quite differently than physical things. We got to remember that. I was telling somebody the other day, matter of fact, I said in one of my lectures, there is a world all around us right now that you and I cannot see, but we can see it if we have a microscope. It's the world of germs, and they can badly affect us. They can kill us, some of them, okay? But yet we never see them unless we have a microscope. But that does not make them any less real. And the same thing is with the spiritual aspects. As I got deep into metaphysics, I understand how the relation of the unseen relates to the seen things and vice versa in this universe.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree with that. So my next question is shadow people. What's your opinion? Everybody has a different opinion on what they are, but what's your opinion on shadow people?
Well, there are different types of shadow people, just like there are different types of vampires. There are different types of werewolves, and these things are real, by the way. They're just not the way Hollywood would have you believe them to be, but they are very real. And there are different types of shadow people, and I think without a doubt, some of them are very demonic. Those that attack you and depress you, or try to keep you from breathing or move or paralyze you. They're definitely demonic attacks. They're spiritual attacks upon you. But then you have some other things that don't fall into that category. I think they may be sort of some type of interdimensional beings of some sort that move through time and space and different realities. Let me say this about spiritual things. Things that exist in the spiritual thing I just got through talking about that we can't see, the spiritual aspects of this universe, are really existing in another dimension from what we are in. That's the way we got to look at it. Scientifically wise, that is definitely, we know without a doubt that there is a possibility of many dimensions. Okay. And definitely, I would have to say that the spiritual aspects of the universe are definitely in another dimension from what we're in. Very much like the movie Constantine. You ever seen the movie Constantine?
Yeah.
You remember that part about hell? It's like it's here, but it's just one step beyond our capability to see it, unless you put your feet in water and you die to go there. that's the interesting thing about it. That's very close, I think, to how the real, true spiritual realm interacts with our existence.
Yep.
I like that movie. I'm a big fan of Keanu Reeves.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, he's a great guy. Actually, I've always wanted to meet him. I met Nicolas Cage, one time, but I've always wanted to meet Keanu Reeves. He looks like he would be a good, fun guy to hang out with.
He seems to be a tremendously decent human being. He's constantly
I hear
reported
you. I
on
hear
the
you.
good things he does.
Very much of a philanthropist.
Yep. And he's constantly just picking out a random person who is in some kind of difficulty and helping them out. In times, endangering himself. That's happened multiple times. He is quite a person.
Oh yeah, he does very good with John Wick, by the way, one of my favorite
Oh my
series.
goodness, I love John Wick.
Yeah.
That's not the most uplifting thing ever, but I love the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Movies, all of them.
And then, I was telling somebody about that the other day. About I know they're very violent, but they're almost like a choreographed dance routine or a ballet. In many ways, with guns, of course. But it's very well. It's very well done. I can admire Hollywood when it does things right, but sometimes, most of the time, it does things wrong, or gets the information wrong on things. Like it comes with werewolves, vampires, and stuff like that. It's feeding off of folklore, but folklore has many indicators. I love folklore, by the way. I've studied folklore for many, many, many years. I'm a member of the American Folklore Society, and it has a lot of clues and indicators for us. Okay, without a doubt. I think it was J.R.R. Tolkien who said that the tales of old wives should never be dismissed. Because they have a lot of wisdom to them. And that's the same thing about folklore, definitely. And if you want to understand certain aspects of the paranormal, you have to go look at folklore and what other people have experienced.
Yeah.
He was a big time studier of Viking and Norwegian folklore. He was a disciple to studying it. I think he liked that probably more than he did literature. And of course, he constantly folded all that folklore into his books. He was an amazing writer.
Well, folklore is our culture. That's what we are. That's what really makes us up as a people in many different aspects. It's very important that we never lose our history. And I've often said, I wrote this one time not long ago, no story, no matter what it is, should ever be lost to history.
Yeah.
Well, I think we have gone down the the materialistic, physical philosophy so deeply that we've lost contact with the folklore about our spiritual self and our spiritual lives almost completely. But there seems to be an awakening, which this is just my feeling. Somehow I feel that we are awakening again because of the emptiness of our lives with all these things in our hands, etc. Things don't make us happy. Interacting well with others would make us happy if we practiced it. It's just it's just a thing that I hope I see as a continual. I don't care what your target is with your spiritual growth, just so you have spiritual growth. Hopefully, you have some moral beacon that guiding you toward a spiritual growth.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with you. And I think also the aspect of our perception on things, how we take things and how we assimilate things in our mind. When I first got many, many, many years ago, and I've been investigating this now for well over half a century. And when I first got into it, I said, I want the whole paranormal pie. I don't want just one slice of it. I want all different aspects of it. To me, that's what made it more fair, because it is all, and as time went on, I found out to be true, so very connected to each other. How can you take one without the other? You can't really. And if you like if you centralize yourself and say, oh, I'm just going to study cryptids, or I'm just going to study earth lights and mysteries, or I'm just going to, you're really cutting yourself off from a whole vast amount of stuff that you could be experiencing. And you're really shortening your horizons when you should be trying to broaden them, you know?
Right.
Yep, I want to agree with that. So I've been called an eclectic, and that's probably true because I like to sample the best of everything I get involved with before I decide to move on and do something else. I can't keep my focus on one thing for 10 years. I can't do that. I have too many interests and things grab my attention, and it's not that I have attention deficit. It's just that I learn something, do something, and figure out, okay, that was good. Let me go try something else. I'm glad that I have that opportunity. I feel blessed.
Oh, absolutely. It's like holding a diamond up to the light. You can never appreciate that diamond unless you turn it and look at all its different facets. You're seeing the whole diamond then. You're not just centralizing yourself on one part of that diamond. But that's the way all of life should be taken. And study, especially study and academic things, should be taken that way. If
Yeah,
you're going to do
I,
something,
I,
you need to do it thoroughly and as
I
much as
love the
possible.
diamond.
Yeah.
I love the diamond facet analogy. I think that's great.
Yeah. Absolutely. If you're not in 100%, you shouldn't be. That's just the way I've always been that way. And you have to be careful, though, because you can become obsessive with it to a certain extent. You don't want to do that because that's unhealthy, you know. But you do want to take it. And I always say, I've had a lot of people ask me, so you know all that stuff about the occult, witchcraft, and all this stuff. Have you ever been tempted to do it? And I said, no, not really. I could if I wanted to, you know, as much knowledge as I have accumulated on it, I could get deep into it if I want to, but I never really took it that way. I took it from a more scholarly point of view than you know, wanting to do it in that experience and experience it that way. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Because I tell you what, like I said earlier, that darkness is all consuming and it is one of the most addictive things on this planet. It's more addictive than meth, cocaine, or anything else out there, pornography, gambling, whatever, because, hey, it's connected to all that, but only in a bigger way. And it is very highly addictive. Power is one of the most addictive things out there. And look at a lot of these people that we consider celebrities and stuff that may be signing certain agreements with things and getting power the wrong way, getting dark money the wrong way. Governments are involved in this. It's been about maybe 20 some odd years ago. I had the CIA try to recruit me because this is what they told me. Okay. This is what they told me. This blew my mind when I got to thinking about it. You know, afterwards, things kind of come home to you more than it does at that time. You know what I'm saying? And later on, I got to thinking what he said. He said, we want people like you that know all about demonology. We want people with supernatural talents. And I'm going, God, what kind of people are you definitely looking for? Are you looking for vampires, werewolves? Are you looking for witches? Are you looking for demonologists? All this? Why do you need to know that?
Right.
That was my big question. I come, well, why do you really need to know that? I think the answer is that they've got in bed with the wrong entities and they realize what they have done. That's just my feeling about it.
You're retired CIA. Can you answer on
Yeah.
behalf of all CIA?
Look. Let's go. Let's go with the UFO story. The UFOs are involving apparently, some kind of unknown entity that's visiting Earth. And the constant story that has leaked out in various ways over 75 years is we made a deal that we now regret. And so they didn't understand the entity. And there are a lot of extremely religious people in the intelligence community and Department of Defense. And they feel that these things we're dealing with are demons. And so they're looking for spiritual help to understand and expel the demons. I'll tell you, there are people in government that believe every bit of that, and they feel they see the activities of those kinds of things all over the place, involving in stirring up trouble all over the place. So I can understand their interest.
Well, having seen some of the things I've seen and experienced some of the things I've experienced, and I have seen demons face to face. I know they are real. I know they exist. I see what they can do. Matter of fact, I know of a lot of people tonight that are 6 foot under put there by these forces.
Can you
That's
talk
how
about that?
dangerous these things can be. Oh yeah, they are very dangerous. And they are real, just as real as you and I are. And um, without a doubt, there are other things out there that are connected to the demonic in this respect. And like I said earlier, I think, taking it from a more religious aspect, what I think you're dealing with are not the aliens from Alpha Centauri, bug-eyed looking aliens. I think they are what we would term as fallen angels, put it that way, okay? And I think they have been with it. They have formed a beachhead on this planet. They are the true aliens, if you want to look at it that way. They are true aliens who have formed a beachhead on this planet since day one. And they have sort of been like a parasite on the backs of humanity ever since then. And they are feeding off of us, our negativity, our hatreds, our darkness that is in us. They're feeding off of us. They are parasites, just like vampires and certain other things in this universe are. They are very real. I can only talk about things I know are real that I have seen face to face. And I've seen Bigfoot. I know he exists. That for me settled the question. You know, I've seen him face to face. We made eye contact. Okay, I know that there's no, without a doubt, he does exist. I have seen reptilians, and I know that is probably what the true face of the fallen angels is now. Okay, because they have lost their true holiness. They have lost their grace. They have lost everything they had that made them true angels. They are no longer angels in the sense that we talk about angels. Matter of fact, very soon on my show, Hunting the Shadows, I'm going to be doing another series on angels and demons. It's a fascinating subject. And it goes into so many connections of everything about our society. These things have infiltrated our governments, our schools, our churches, our media, our military. The list goes on and on and on. They have contaminated AI. They have gone into technology. They have given us, by the way, what I call celestial mechanics. They have given us dark science that is angelic in its origin, but they have perverted it and turned it against us. They have taught mankind how to make war to a certain extent, okay? The list goes on and on and on. When you get into the demonic side of these things, you realize just how far reaching, how insidious this whole influence is by these things. It is mind boggling. I call it the ultimate conspiracy theory. Nothing else can blow it out of the water like this can.
Yeah, the common term in UFO circles, which is the thing I'm probably more familiar with, is they're looshing. They're consuming our loosh, which is our negative emotions, negative feelings, and consequences of negative actions, and they thrive on it. Some kind of negative energy feeding.
Absolutely. And when you have a negative outlook or a negative life that you live, you are opening the door spiritually to these things, not only to feed off of you, but to become an influence in your life. Okay. And take over certain aspects. That's where true possession comes in. You have to open the door, though. You know, like I said earlier, I've had people said, I got this sign, am I possessed? Am I possessed? I said, most of the time, if you're worrying about being possessed, you're probably not possessed. Okay. That's usually the way it goes. But you're not just walking down the street one day and boom, you get possessed. You have to open the door. You have to invite these things into your life in some way or another, however that is. It can be through the abuse of alcohol or drugs. It can be through pornography. It can be through abusing things. Whatever the situation is, once you open that door, and you don't have to open it very far, you just crack it open. These guys are opportunists. They're waiting for that opportunity to come in and start really screwing your life up every which way they can, because that's what they do. Because the more they screw your life up, the more negativity they create in your life, the more they can feed off of it, the stronger they become. And that's what I tell a lot of people. I've consulted with people for many years all over the world with demonology problems, and I tell them something very strange. You got to remember one thing when it comes to the demons: don't feed the beast. Don't feed them what they want. It's like kids in a candy shop, you know. You give them too much candy, they're going to end up with a bad stomach. Okay, they're going to end up with a upset stomach. You don't do that. You don't do that with demons. The more you feed them, the stronger they will become and the more influence they will have over you. This is the insidious thing about them. It's sort of like a spiritual perpetual motion machine.
Mm-hmm.
And the longer it goes, the worse it gets. I have gone into actual homes that have been invaded by these forces, and it is like a living hell in these places where people were once kind and loving, and they have turned on each other like animals to a certain extent. And you asked earlier about serial killers. This is one of the things that is the hallmark of serial killers. They have no more humanity left in them.
Right.
They can't feel for you as a human being because they are no longer human beings.
Right.
And I've told this to a lot of people over the years, and I had a lot of people say, it's a strange statement for you to make, but I stand by it. There are a lot of things out there walking around that look human, but are not human.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of humans walking around out there that are no longer humans.
Yeah, you can see
Okay, you
it
can
in.
take it every which way you want it, but that's what's going on in this world. And when you lose your humanity, and you are a lost soul, you have no more empathy, you got no more feeling. You're only looking out for number one. That's you. You only care about what you want. You become a super supreme narcissist,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yep.
you can't love anybody but yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the number one thing that ties all these serial killers together. And I've studied many of them over the years, is the fact that they have no more empathy. They are no more really human beings anymore.
I remember I was looking in the neighborhood at you know how you can look up sex registry lists of all the people in your area, and I noticed that although they might look physically different, every one of their eyes looked the same type of dead inside. It was just this blankness to them. And it was almost as if something else was looking out at me besides them. It was such a weird thing to see. But now I've noticed that really bad people do have that kind of look to them. You're right. I agree with you.
That's very true. That I'm gonna tell you what, and I've seen this many times. What you are on the inside eventually comes out. Okay, if you are pure evil and dark on the inside, that's going to show up sooner or later, somehow or another. Usually through the eyes. The eyes truly are the windows of the soul. By the way, that's very true. And I have actually seen the eyes go dark. And I'm not talking about the whole eye going dark. I'm talking about the iris, the pupil actually. Like, like when you go to have your eyes checked and all that, and they put the drops in, and all that. I've seen them do that without the influence of drugs or anything. Okay.
Oh my God.
That is like almost like there's so much darkness in them. You can't help but see it coming out somehow, some way or another. It tells.
Oh yeah, I agree.
So can you curse the blood of somebody, and does the blood carry the curse?
Well, like I said earlier about the bloodline curse thing, definitely there can be people who have bad blood in them for certain reasons. We do know that there are certain entities in this world that like to feed off of, I call it the red gravy. Okay. They like to feed off of that because, especially, it becomes very addictive to them in certain ways because of the adrenaline flow in it. The younger the blood, the better they like it, especially if they can get fear going in that. Okay.
I
And that
know what
negativity we talked about earlier, that enhances that blood. It makes it almost very much like a narcotic to them to a certain
Mhm.
extent. They love that. Okay. And the younger the blood, the better, because it is more influenced by fear and emotion in that
Yeah,
respect than the people who are older, you know. Uh,
exactly.
let's face it. If you're 90 years old, it ain't a whole lot left to come scare you in this world. Okay, uh, you've been around all time, you know, so you're pretty well hardened to things. But the younger you are, the more innocent you are. That's what they really love. And but there are also other entities out there that don't stop at blood. They feed off of the life essence of your energy, of your soul. These are just as dangerous. It's not more so in some ways. I was telling somebody the other day on a podcast, we have a built-in spiritual barrier around us. It is a personal space. We all don't get in my personal space kind of thing. You know, you begin to get real uncomfortable when somebody does that sometimes, unless it's
Right.
somebody you want to get in your space. You know what I'm saying? But if you get uncomfortable, there's a reason for that. You know, nobody's ever asked why. Why is that? Because it's sort of like a spiritual built-in spiritual barrier.
Right.
And once anything invades that, it's like a red flag going off in your, consciousness saying, "Hey, there's something wrong here. You know, I don't feel right. There's something going on, definitely wrong." When you let someone, and we need to be very careful. We're very bad about touching people. Sometimes there's certain people out there we really don't need to touch. Okay, put it that
Mhm.
way. And certain people out there we don't need touching us because
Mhm.
they can not only be feeding off of your energy, but can also send you bad energy
Okay.
in certain ways. You got to be very careful who you let in that space, that spiritual barrier, because that barrier is there for a reason. Even animals have this barrier. If you get too close to a lion or something, what do you think he's going to do? He's going to get you, okay? Because you
Mhm.
invaded his personal space for one thing. Because they get agitated, they get angry, they get upset. You especially you don't want to get a bear upset with you like that or something, because you're going to have a problem. And same
Mhm.
thing with people. People will get angry with you sometimes. Don't touch me. Get away from me. You get too close to me or something. It's understandable because that's a built-in barrier that we have.
So I would say the thing I see in videos and movies that really creeps me out, it really does bother me, is black-eyed kids. Have you dealt with black-eyed kids at all?
I have actually had several cases of that. I've never actually met them my
Whew.
own self, but I have had several cases, and I've seen what kind of a fearful reaction people have had from these encounters. I have to believe these things are definitely downright demonic in that, uh, or either they're fallen angel related or whatever the situation is. There's something very bad about these guys, and what really bugs me about it, they want to be invited. They're
Mhm.
always wanting you to initiate the invitation. That's not good. That is not a good sign at all when you run
Mhm.
into something like that. Because, like I said earlier, these things want to be invited into your life. They have to be invited. Let me tell you something very interesting. You got to always remember our Creator gave us authority, spiritual authority. We are higher, actually, supposed to be than the angels. Okay. We have spiritual authority, and the bad guys don't want us to exercise that authority. Okay. But they recognize that authority. It's like God has drawn a line in the sand and say, okay, you can't cross this line unless you get authority. That's
Right.
just the way they work. And when you authorize these guys, then it's just like there are many spells and curses that are put in your food and your drink or handed to you. And if you take it, if you're foolish enough to take it, it's yours. That's it. I'm sorry. It's yours. You own it. Okay. Until you pass it on to somebody else or whatever the situation is. That's why your mom always told you not to take things from strangers. Okay. You never know what you're taking. Be very careful what you invite into your life in whatever way you may invite it.
What is this first thing you would do if you feel you're dealing with dark entities and you want to disinvite them? What is your first thing you do? Pray? What is the first thing?
Well, I like to, to strengthen that spiritual barrier. Definitely, that's there. And when I do a lot of investigations, I go into places that I know, and I believe me, I have been in some very bad situations where you could feel evil as real as a fog or something. I mean, it was that real, you could almost touch it, you know. And you want to go in protected, and you definitely want to come out protected. And I have had so many cases of so-called paranormal investigators who have these attachment problems. They bring something home with them, you know. When I tell them, I said, why did you do that? You should have protected yourself going in and coming out. That's the smart thing to do. Just like you would not leave the house without your raincoat if it's raining, okay, or your umbrella. You want to keep yourself protected no matter what the situation is. And faith is one of the things. Faith in a higher being and a higher creator is one of the things that strengthens that spiritual barrier.
Yep, I agree.
So Ryan has had health problems, and so he's had several near-death experiences. He wants to know, do the near-death experiences open up an avenue for demonic possessions, UAPs, and other things? He's clearly looking for information.
Well, a lot of demonic activity is known to be connected to some types of health problems. But here's the insidious thing about the demonology stuff. It can be demons can use either mental health or physical health or whatever the situation is to hide behind these things. Okay, so you have to know exactly what it is you're dealing with, and you need to go to professionals to find out. You know, if it's not a physical problem or a mental problem or whatever, so then you go from there as it being a spiritual problem. Okay. You got to rule out certain things first before you say, oh, it's got to be this. I have one rule that I've always lived with since the beginning. You must first prove what it isn't before you can prove what it is.
Got it. So
But
Ryan
if
also
you've
thinks,
got some kind of a problem, you need to start investigating it to figure out exactly what the problem is and what's going on with that. As the Bible has said over many times, you test the spirits. You've got to be one leg up in the saddle to know exactly what's going on, especially if it's happening to you. We can be manipulated in many instances by certain things. We have to be very careful how we approach these things. We're just human beings. We can be fooled. We can be deceived by certain things out there. That's like I said, that Hollywood movies are very good at playing with your emotions. You remember in the horror movie, before the bad guy shows up or the monster shows up, they start playing the spooky music. They're getting your emotions ready to really scare you. Okay, that's how they manipulate your emotions. Well, these things can manipulate our emotions. They can manipulate us mentally, physically,
Yep.
and spiritually. We have to be careful, very careful how we deal with these things.
so Tennessee Kentucky Bigfoot brings up an important point. Do you have kind of a process you go through for dealing with people who are helping evil but may not themselves be possessed?
Well, if someone were to come to me possessed, like I say, I'm not an exorcist, I would try to find them an exorcist, definitely. And that's getting harder and harder to do, unfortunately, because a lot of mainline churches do not want to handle this stuff anymore. Matter of fact, I have offered to do seminars in churches about demonology. They say, oh, no, get away from us with that stuff. We don't want to mess with that stuff. But this is a spiritual thing, okay? And they won't ignore this. To me, that's kind of stupid because that's like throwing the baby out with the water. Okay. To me, you got to understand what's going on. And if there is somebody definitely, and like I said earlier, I think possession's a little more rare than Hollywood would have us believe, but it does happen. Well, let me say this. If you run into a full-blown thing of possession, it usually takes years for them to work on this. It's not over in a couple of hours with about 2 or 3 people going in and doing their whatever. No, it doesn't work that way. This can go on for years, and it takes a team of people. It takes physicians. It takes psychiatrists. It takes drug tests. It takes the list goes on and on and on. No wonder the church doesn't want to touch it. I can understand where their point of view on it too. But somebody, if they come to you and they need help, and that's what happened to me many years ago when I first got into the paranormal and began investigating stuff. People were coming to me and say, I need help with this, and this. Here's the thing about it. There are so many groups out there that are just social clubs. Okay. They say we won't go, oh, we went in, we got scared, we had fun, we left. That's not helping anybody. That's not solving any problems. That's not helping science at all, definitely. Okay. It's not doing anybody any good. That's just a superficial thing. What are they in it for? They just in it for the laughs, they in it for the fun. That's not. I had people coming to me say, I need help. My life's being messed up here. My family's being torn apart. I need help. It's hard to turn somebody away that needs help. So I would definitely start beginning to try to find these people. I've done it many times over the years. Try to find them some help. If I can't help them, I find somebody that can help them.
Right.
Put it that way. And that's the way
Yeah,
I always want to approach this thing. But if you're not there to help, you need to get out.
Right.
I'm not a fan of big ghost hunters who don't have the ability or the desire to actually help with these problems. No fan.
Well,
They leave the people
they're
in
in it
distress.
mainly for the glory of money. That's what it's coming from. My grandfather once told me something many years ago that always stuck with me. He said, son, be suspicious, very, very, very suspicious of anything having to do with money. I do not charge for my services. I have never charged for my services. Okay. I have let people donate, some money if they want to, help my gas money or whatever the situation was. Sure, fine, thank you, but I'm not going to charge you. What can I do? Sit down, okay, you had 3 demons and I got rid of 2 of them. How much do I charge you for that? Where are you going with that? But if it's all about money and fame and glory and getting the next series going, I've been offered TV series several times. Okay.
Wow.
But I wouldn't play their game with them. I didn't. I wanted to be honest. They didn't like that. But anyway, that's what it's all about with those people. You got to see where they're coming from. Let me say one more thing. If you got to go out and sell yourself, and I understand if you got podcasts and you got books and all, there's nothing wrong with that. Okay. If you got a product to sell, that's fine. But if you go out mainly just to sell yourself, you're sort of in the wrong branch of prostitution here. Okay. You're really selling yourself out to a certain extent. So you can go too far with anything like that. You know what I'm saying? I agree with you 100%. If it's all about that for them, where their real true alliances at,
right,
or where their real intentions are,
I mean, Dennis, I can't imagine going into somebody's home where the family is experiencing a lot of stuff and they go in there and they provoke it. They go in there and tease it. They go in there and they stir it up and go, oh, we found it. Have fun. Bye.
Yeah.
I really despise that.
Well,
That's just evil.
I've had people say, you go in there and provoke that thing, make it mad. I said, why would I want to do that? I want to get rid of it. Why do I want to get it mad at me? Okay. That's just making matters worse in that respect, especially when you're dealing with this, a very blatant spiritual process going on. To me, there's a right way and a wrong way to do everything. You don't want to do it the wrong way. It takes more time. You want to do it the right way to begin with. That makes more sense. But certain people have certain different techniques and they think they know what they're doing, but actually they need to be very careful on some of this stuff because as Lala said earlier, you can get attachments. These things that can happen to you. They can mess your life up. If you don't do it the right way, you can also hurt the people you're trying to help.
Yeah.
As well.
I have a couple questions in one, really quick.
Go for it.
I wanted to know more about. You said you knew about vampires and what's it called? Some people call them dogmen. Some people call them werewolves. Are they more of like a ghost apparition, or can they become physical, or can they morph into things? And then the last question, after that is about. I'd like to know about incubus and succubus and your opinions about that, or maybe ones that something that gets like possessive over a person in a maybe sexual way. Okay.
Absolutely. The succubus and the incubus are definitely sexual demons, but
Right.
they're one and the same demon. They can just take on different attributes that they need. They can be female or male, but demons are really truly asexual. In other words, they're not really male or female, but they can appear that way to do whatever damage they want to do. But one of the very first questions I ask people, and the interview is very important. You know what I'm talking about. When you interview people, you got to find out as much true information as possible, and you'd be surprised at how unforthcoming some people are. You have to drag it out of some people. But the very first thing I ask, especially women, is well, I ask men the same thing too. Have you been sexually, assaulted, or have you been, touched in some way, or have been approached this way? Well, you need to know that in case you're dealing with a succubus or an incubus type thing going on. Let me say this about the sexual demons. They realize that they have a certain amount of power over you that way, like a rapist. I've seen a lot of women, the aftermath of what women have gone through to being after being raped. It is not a crime of lust and sex, actually. It is a crime of power. That's basically what it is. Getting power over somebody else, basically, is what it truly is. And it is abusive power, too, by the way. Very abusive. I've seen what it has done to certain women's lives, definitely. And men, too. Men can be assaulted the same way, although they don't want to talk about it as much as a woman would actually come out and admit it. Because, men got to play the macho game a lot of times. Oh, I don't need no help, Uh, so they won't be as forthcoming about it, But eventually, you can get them open up to it. It's very important how you interview people. But we've got to remember that sex is a part of our lives. This is another part they can attack us with. This is another way they can abuse us with. Okay, it's just part of that. Just like it could abuse you with eating food or drinking alcohol or whatever the situation is. They can abuse you with different things. Sex is just one of them. They're just doing this to get power over you. That's what it's all about. Just like the human rapists, they wanting to get that power to get something over on you. They love that. That's what it's. And if you go back and look through folklore and look through time, look at all of the very strange incidents where people worship gods. I think a lot of times those gods were truly demons
Right.
because they are, let me say this about them, they are big, supreme egomaniacs. They want to be worshiped. They want power. They love power. They're all about power and slavery. That's another thing that they're big into. They would love us to be their slaves and to have that power over us because here's the thing about it. They are usurping the authority that we have been given by our Creator. If they can beat down that authority and take that authority away from us or keep us from using that authority, then they will have the supreme power over us. Then you are truly open to possession, full on. That's the way that works.
Got another question?
Do you want to?
No, I want to. So look, I know you're an author of books. So tell our people in the chat and other audiences about your books and where they can find them.
Okay, well, I have several books on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. The last couple of books I have, the first one is Beyond the Shadows, a field guide to the paranormal. Sort of something you can take along with you to reference. And the second book is The Road Unseen. That's where I sort of like a quasi encyclopedia, and I also talk about the demonology and some other stuff in that as well. You can get them by looking up Dennis W. Carroll on Amazon or Barnes and Noble. I have a podcast that, as a matter of fact, I have 3 podcasts a week. I have one called on Monday nights called The Road Less Traveled at 9 o'clock p.m. All my shows are 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, okay? And then Hunting the Shadows Wednesday nights. And on Friday nights, Paranormal Point of View. I do a lot of book reviews, movies, and stuff like that on there that are sort of from a paranormal slant.
Cool.
I have a website. If anybody is out there and needs any more questions answered, or you just want, I have a consulting thing too. I consult with people on paranormal problems. You can get in touch with me on denniswcarroll.com or denniswcarroll@gmail.com if you have any questions or answers or whatever, for anything you want to talk about.
Very good. So we have a couple minutes, but first of all, I would love for you to come back again because there's so much information. I mean, I really enjoyed you on here, by the way.
It was enjoyable, and it's look, it's different. It's different from the UFO and this and that and the other type. It's you're a different guest, and you have a very different perspective, and people need to hear it.
Yeah, I like it. So my last.
Well, I was trying to think outside the box, I try to think outside the box and take it from different points on that. But matter of fact, I even had a UFO experience. We'll talk about that maybe next time. It sort of like for a while there, I was living the Mothman prophecies. You remember the Mothman prophecies?
Oh yeah.
I kind of was living that. There was some weird stuff happened. As a matter of fact, I tell about some of that that happened in that book, The Road Unseen. It was very, very weird stuff, but it was a triangular UFO. So very much like you hear about these being seen all over the world. Well, somebody asked me about it not long ago. Said, "What do you think? What do you think it was?" I said, "Well, I don't know what it was. I can't really say for sure 100%, but I just don't feel like it belongs to us. If we have something like that, we could take over the world tomorrow. Wouldn't be no problem." It was military, but I just don't know who's military, if you know what I mean.
We've seen since we've been together, we've seen 3 of them. 1 over our house and 2 on the highway near us. It's pretty different, and I don't know whether it's human or not human, but it's wow. If the humans have it, I don't know why we're having problems in the world.
Well, anything that's big, what I saw was as big as almost. I mean, it would have been a hard time setting this down in a football field. Okay,
Oh,
it was that big, huge, and completely silent. Everything I've seen, everything that flies, and it makes a noise. This did not make any noise whatsoever. It was the weirdest thing I have.
The triangle we saw come over the house, this felt like it was moving silky smooth through there. No jerk, nothing, dead silent. It was big, but I couldn't tell how high it was, so I could figure out how big it was, but it was not small. But anyway, the one that really got to me,
here's the thing about it. For many years,
we were driving down the highway.
Many years, I studied UFOs and stuff like that, and the many case reports. I went over thousands of case reports. I was deep into abductions and all this other stuff. But when you actually experience something like that for yourself, you turn another completely different corner in your perspective on things.
Yes, you. Well, look, I really want to thank you for being here. It was a delight and a treat. And yeah, you can come back in April if you would. We'll work it out. She'll work it out with you. She'll work it out with you. And we haven't seen each other since we left Grizzly and did our own thing. So it's good to see you again. And thank you for being here.
Yeah, it's good to connect with you again. I haven't seen you in a long. It's been a while back, but you're like you got a good format and everything here. I really like it.
Well, good. We like to have conversations because we're kind of talking. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.